Hey everyone, welcome to Quick Break Games, and today we're going to be ranking the 6 main LEGO Star Wars games now that LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga has released. So just to be clear, this ranking does exclude any of the mobile games, spin-offs, or anything like that. I actually made this exact same ranking before Skywalker Saga came out, so let's see how my opinions have changed over the last few years. And I do want to note we are ranking these games as they exist today, by today's standards, so kind of keep that in mind when you consider my ranking. But without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and get started with number 6. So at the bottom of the list at number 6, we have LEGO Star Wars the video game from 2005. This is the game that started it all, and I really hate having to put this at the bottom of the list, but I think most would agree that this game is a bit dated now, especially when comparing it to the newer games. First off, obviously the graphics are the worst since it is the oldest. Remember, we are ranking these games as they exist now, so this would definitely be the most outdated aspect of LEGO Star Wars 1. The textures on the LEGO character models are pretty blurry, environments feel empty, and this one just has the least amount of detail. I think another big criticism would have to be the levels. These levels are super short. And if you haven't played these levels in a while, they might be shorter than you remember. Assuming you're not grinding to fill the true Jedi bar, most levels are probably under 5 minutes. Seriously, time yourself playing negotiations to see how long it takes you. Now there are a couple levels that are a bit longer, like Retake Theed Palace, that maybe take 10 to 15 minutes long, but there's really not too many of those. But I gotta say, this game does hold a special place for me though. I love the Dexter's Diner hub, and I actually prefer it over the Mos Eisley Cantina. I know a lot of people are nostalgic for the Cantina fights, but us OGs remember the fights that went down in Dexter's Diner. I also kind of love the simplicity of this game. To get 100%, all you have to do is just get True Jedi status and collect all 10 mini-kits in all of the 17 levels, and you're pretty much done. So overall, LEGO Star Wars the video game is an awesome game that ultimately kickstarted the TT Games LEGO game franchise, but they've obviously improved over the years, which is why it has to come in at number 6. At number 5, we have LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy from 2006. This is the second game in the modern LEGO game franchise. This one lands towards the bottom of the ranking for a lot of the same reasons as the first game. So like the first game, you have lower end graphics. However, this was the first LEGO game to just barely land on the 7th generation of game consoles by releasing on the Xbox 360. It offered HD graphics for the first time in a LEGO game, so this version at least holds up today a lot more than the first game. The levels in LEGO Star Wars 2 are a much better length than the prequel trilogy game as well. I would say they're about 10 to 20 minutes long on average, which I think is the perfect sweet spot. But one super annoying thing is how the True Jedi bar works. In this game, you have to fill the True Jedi bar twice for each level, one time in story mode and another time in free play. Now that's just dumb. And another annoying thing I want to mention are the score multiplier extras. This was the first game to have them, but they made them so expensive that anything above ×4 studs is pretty much unobtainable on a normal 100% playthrough. Anytime I play this game, I find myself having to grind studs off the stud fountain to afford these, so they're pretty much useless. Now gameplay-wise, they did add a ton of features to make this game better than the original, like building LEGO objects, pulling switches, riding vehicles, character creator, and more. But still, compared to the modern games, it feels fairly basic. So wrapping this one up, LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy, is a solid game and a significant improvement over the first game, but of course the later games added so much more, which is why this one has to come in at number 5. Number 4, we have LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens from 2016. I replayed this game since I did my last ranking a few years ago, and it has definitely changed my opinion on this one. This is a LEGO Star Wars game based on a single movie, which isn't totally bad, but I think that's where most of its problems come from. So I'll start with the positives. This game has several large open worlds to explore. You've got places like Jakku, Starkiller Base, which was missing from the Skywalker Saga by the way, Takodana, and more. And each of these has loads of collectibles and minigames to find. Another great thing is the character roster. It is pretty massive, especially if you purchase all the DLC. There's even a few characters in here that are missing from the Skywalker Saga. Okay, so now when it comes to levels, this is where the negatives start coming in. The levels here are all probably around 20 to 30 minutes long on average, which I think is really solid. However, this game has roughly 10 levels based on a single movie. This ultimately leads to some boring filler content like the infamous The Resistance level, where there's not a single bit of combat as you're wandering around collecting Wookiee cookies for Chewbacca. Not that fun. And I think this hurts the hub worlds too, since all the famous or classic Star Wars locations like Tatooine or Coruscant can't be included since they weren't featured in the Force Awakens movie. And one thing that's weird about this game is the combat. It just feels like the worst of all the LEGO Star Wars games. The lightsaber duels are clunky, and some characters have both a blaster and lightsaber, and it's impossible to tell which one they're going to pull out when you use the attack button. Could they really not map these two to separate buttons? I don't know, just something about the combat in this game just feels off. Anyways, I wouldn't say LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens is terrible or anything like that. It has a great character roster and a lot of content to explore, but it's just loaded with filler content and has some really odd gameplay decisions, making it land in the number 4 spot. So number 3 is LEGO Star Wars 3 The Clone Wars from 2011. This is the game based around the Clone Wars TV show, and this was a really fun entry in the LEGO Star Wars game series. First off, visually, this game made a big leap over the previous LEGO Star Wars games that came before. Character models are a lot more detailed and they have kind of like a shiny texture to them, and the game is able to show a ton of enemies on screen at once. Obviously, it doesn't look as good as the most recent games, but the graphics still hold up fairly well, if only it wasn't stuck at 30 FPS on consoles. Gameplay-wise, I almost would say the combat feels the best over all the other LEGO Star Wars games. You're playing as lightsaber-wielding Jedi throughout most of the game, and the lightsaber gameplay just feels very satisfying. The opposite of the feeling I had when playing The Force Awakens combat. I don't know, just something about it feels really smooth when you're chopping down droid after droid. The levels here are all a solid length as well. I don't remember any of them overstaying their welcome in particular, except for the big ground battles. This was a new feature where you're battling huge amounts of enemies as you try to take out enemy defenses while building some of your own. I think these levels are fine, but I do think they get old after a while, especially if you're going for 100% completion like me. You're going to be doing like over 50 of these things. It's definitely a grind. Now moving on to the hub world, this one is pretty good. You're on a Republic capital ship, but it eventually expands to where you can fly into a Separatist capital ship as well. It's pretty neat how they incorporated the space vehicle gameplay into the hub. All the red bricks are found here too, so there's certainly an incentive to explore. So overall, LEGO Star Wars 3 The Clone Wars is an excellent LEGO Star Wars game. The gameplay feels smooth and there's a lot of content here. However, the big ground battles drag on a bit too long and the character roster is mostly limited to just the first 2 seasons of the Clone Wars, which is why I'm going to have to put this one at number 3. Alright, so at number 2 we have LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga from 2022, the newest entry in the LEGO Star Wars game series, which is the biggest LEGO game to date. Now this game pretty much has it all, as you get to play through all 9 of the main Star Wars movies through a whopping 45 levels. There's also 20 plus massive, fully explorable hub world planets for all the major locations that appear in those movies. Each of these have collectible Kyber bricks to find and side missions to complete. Dexter's Diner and the Mos Eisley Cantina went from being the hub worlds themselves to just small areas within over 20 hub worlds. Now we of course have to talk about the character roster. If you purchase all the currently available DLC at the time of this video coming out, you'll have access to over 400 characters in the Star Wars universe, more than any other LEGO game. Many of these even have their own unique voice lines and animations. In terms of gameplay, the gameplay here has been completely overhauled. Some may disagree, but I think it's overall an improvement over how all the prior LEGO games played. There's a new third-person camera angle. This allows for the blaster and lightsaber combat to gain a whole new perspective. You can freely aim and move at the same time while using blasters, and lightsaber combat incorporates force powers, blocking, throwing the lightsaber, and more. Now this all sounds awesome, and you might be wondering at this point why I haven't put it at number 1, but this game isn't perfect, and we're going to go over those criticisms right now. So first off, I would say my main criticism has to be the levels. If you're someone who wants to focus on the main story content of playing through the 9 movies, you might be disappointed with this game. The majority of the levels are only about 5 minutes long, and at least for me, they don't feel very replayable. Now of course, you'll want to play them at least once to get all the mini-kits and complete the new level challenges, but after that, they aren't substantial enough to make you want to play them again. Some of the major boss fights barely support free play mode too, as they don't even let you switch your character. This is a basic feature that should be included. And then we gotta talk about all the bugs with this game. Of course, all LEGO games have their own bugs, but I would say this one is a little bit worse than your average LEGO game. Even as I'm recording this nearly 9 months after release, going off and doing side content during your initial story playthrough of the 9 movies can potentially break progression through the story entirely. There's also still some visual glitches like sky flickering on open world planets. I just don't understand how some of this stuff hasn't been fixed yet. And lastly, why is there still no character creator? This has been a standard feature for basically every LEGO game since 2006 when LEGO Star Wars 2 came out, so it's pretty baffling that they didn't include it here even after release. But okay, I could talk about this game for a while, so let's wrap this one up. LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga is a super ambitious game that mostly pulls it off. There's just an insane amount of content here, and it's a lot of fun. It just misses the mark when it comes to levels, and can at times be a buggy mess, which is why I'm going to have to put this in the number 2 spot. Alright, so at number 1 we have the OG classic in the number 1 spot, LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga from 2007. This is the ultimate LEGO Star Wars game. So this game basically combines those original 2 LEGO Star Wars games, allowing you to play through the original 6 George Lucas Star Wars films from front to back. This game's hub is the classic Mos Eisley Cantina. Here you can buy things from the shop, start fights with the NPC characters, create your own character, something you couldn't do in Skywalker Saga, or start playing the games over 36 levels. The Complete Saga also has an insane amount of replayability. To get 100%, you have to play through the game's 36 levels a minimum of 4 times each. Some may call this annoying, but I find it pretty enjoyable because you're doing different things each time. You know, you do story mode, challenge mode, and free play, but I would say the 4th time when you have to do it through Super Story does suck though. On top of that, you have bonus levels like bounty hunter missions, and there's even a 2-player battle arcade mode where you can have a lightsaber duel with your co-op buddy. And speaking of co-op, this is one of the only LEGO games to feature online play. It works fairly well too. Now I have no idea why they didn't make this a priority for the Skywalker Saga game. It really would have gone a long way if they had included it. The character roster is pretty good too. Almost anyone you can think of from the original 6 Star Wars movies is here. You have Obi-Wan, Anakin, Luke, Vader, and there's even some deep cuts like Boss Nass and Watto who weren't in the original 2 games. Now obviously the big issue this game faces now is that it's very outdated with its lack of the sequel trilogy. I guess you could say it's not so complete anymore. So you aren't going to find any levels or characters from those movies. And there's also some other issues. The prequel levels in particular are super short since they are the same ones from the original game. They did make some minor improvements to them though. And of course, in terms of open world content, there is none, and the graphics are pretty old school now, but to be honest, they don't look completely terrible. I think the fact that everything's in LEGO allows them to hold up a lot better than other games from that time period. But what makes this game so important, and a big reason why I had to put this at number 1, is that it really serves as the foundation for all the LEGO games that have come after it. I know there was the first 2 LEGO Star Wars games, but the Complete Saga really solidified the LEGO game formula and brought it into mainstream popularity. So yes, overall, I would say LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga is the best LEGO Star Wars game. It's jammed packed with levels, it has a ton of characters, it's got replayability, it has online play, and although it's fairly outdated, it's truly a classic in the LEGO Star Wars franchise, and I think everyone should play it even today. Alright, so that is my ranking of the 6 mainline LEGO Star Wars games. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this ranking, and be sure to give your ranking down below and give me some reasons as to why you're putting things where they're at. It's always fun to read those. So give this video a like if you enjoyed it, dislike it if not, subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you guys next time here on Quick Break Games.